big vibes, guys. It's your boy Black Finesse. Stay blessed or say less. We're here to watch the Battle of Stalingrad, which is not recommended apparently. It came out 12 days ago. From my own knowledge, I think the Battle of Stalingrad, it was obviously between the Soviet Union and Germany. And I know it was over on the East Coast, and that battle went on for what, months? Fucking 2 months, I think. I can't remember specifically how long the actual battle was. I just know it was a while. It was cold. It was just a battle for that city, and it was just like very, very long battle. And it's just like, hey, the Germans, they lost so many people during that battle. But I guess this will explain a little bit of the specifics as to why Germany lost so bad. But this is just in general the Battle of Stalingrad, so it's not recommended. So the category says battle unlike any other. So let's go.
Battle of Stalingrad is considered the deadliest and most brutal single battle in human history, with casualties that exceed those of many entire wars. However, the numbers are just numbers, and you don't really get the idea of how bad this actually was until you reduce it to a personal level and describe the actual way it happened.
Okay.
People were brought to the breaking point where humanity as we know it simply ceased to exist. From
Wow.
complete mercilessness through atrocities all the way to cannibalism. When the battle finally
Cannibalism?
99% of the city was completely destroyed, and just around 1,500 of over half.
Okay, I do remember there being cannibalism, because I think there was a story about that beforehand where I think it was Germany. Well, it was, I want to say it was both sides, right? That both sides actually had to switch to cannibalism, like, because there was no food, supplies couldn't get to the front lines and stuff like that. And I know some were just freezing cold, so they had to use that for like, yeah.
1 million of its inhabitants were still alive in the ruins. So let's briefly go over the course of the battle to set the stage for what was about to happen, so you'll get the complete picture and understand the kind of horrific suffering that was coming. It was the summer of 1942 when Hitler launched Operation Blue. This was a massive German offensive into southern Russia, with the goal of seizing the oil-rich Caucasus region and capturing the city of Stalingrad on the Volga River. This would secure Germany's flank and, as a nice bonus, deliver a symbolic blow to the Soviet Union by capturing the city that bore its leader's name. So, the German army group south was split into two thrusts, one going after the oil fields, and the other, of course, towards Stalingrad. They didn't know it at the time, but the Germans were already making a mistake that would cost the entire 8th Army its existence.
Damn.
On the other side, the Soviet Union knew the price of the fall of Stalingrad and the oil fields, so Stalin himself issued the infamous Order No. 227, stating not one step back. As you probably assumed, any unauthorized retreat was strictly forbidden, and blocking detachments were formed with orders to shoot any deserters who might try to leave.
Okay, so it sounds like the goal was to attack their supplies, which is typical, and I guess your boy already knew that. Stalin already knew that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I wouldn't be surprised. It's like, that's what helps get your tanks and all that stuff out there. So, I mean, that's kind of common knowledge.
Their positions. This strategic setup from both sides set the stage for the savage fighting that was about to unfold. By late August 1942, the German 6th Army under General Friedrich Paulus and the 4th Panzer Army under General Hermann Hoth reached Stalingrad's outskirts. The city's population had little time to fully evacuate, while tens of thousands of residents were mobilized to dig trenches and prepare defensive networks. And they were still there now as the fire...
Is that what it looks like with color?
On August 23rd, 1942, the relentless Luftwaffe bombing raids began, with wave after wave of bombers blanketing the city and already killing a staggering number of civilians and soldiers.
Damn. Honestly, you would think that the civilians would have had time to evacuate if Stalin knew that they were going after the oil fields and Stalingrad in itself. So I wonder why it took them so long, or why they didn't really pull back.
Very first day, a huge portion of the city was in flames and reduced to rubble. Then came the German tanks into the northern suburbs, where they faced something they couldn't have even dreamed of. A unit of literally teenage girls manning anti-aircraft guns opened fire on advancing Germans.
Teenage girls?
Holding them off and reportedly knocking out over 80 of them before being overrun.
Oh shit.
Shocked Germans pressed through isolated strongholds of resistance, and by early September, assault units had reached...
Why is there not a story about this?
...and split Soviet defenses. Red Army reinforcements were urgently flooded in across the river to stop the Germans from advancing to the other side. By November, the Germans held 90% of the city, while the Soviets were cornered in two small enclaves along the river. Exhaustion on both sides was palpable, but this was only a warm-up for what was
Soviets
about to
was
come,
losing at first,
because the Soviets were preparing a huge counterstrike to take advantage of the Germans' overextended yet overconfident position, and the battle was about to shift inside the city, and that, quite literally, would become hell on earth for both sides. Unbeknownst to the Germans, the Red Army was amassing fresh armies on the flanks of the city, and on November 19th, Operation Uranus was unleashed. Germany's weakly held flanks, manned by their not so well motivated and poorly equipped Romanian, Italian, and Hungarian allies, were shattered and overrun by waves of T-34 tanks and infantry. In just 4 days, 2 Soviet thrusts met each other west of Stalingrad, completely encircling the entire German 6th Army and parts of the 4th Panzer Army inside the city.
Oh, okay. So this was more like a lure them in, entrapment, and just get rid of them all. Like, but it was just a long battle. So I mean, obviously it's because it's a city, so it's like you're hiding within buildings. So it was just going for a while. You wouldn't really, you know what I'm saying? Like it's different. But now I want to know a story about the girls, the little teenage girls who literally took out a lot of the tanks. Come on, man. Like, why is that not talked about? Like, make a story about
300,000 Axis soldiers were now trapped in a stunning reversal, now besieged within the enemy city. Panic and confusion swept through German high command, and General Paulus begged for the order to break through the encirclement while they still had the strength to do it, and while Soviet defenses were not yet fully locked in. But to his horror, Hitler personally forbade any retreat from the city. He ordered the encircled army to fortify themselves and hold out, promising that the Luftwaffe would resupply them entirely by air.
Nope.
This order would seal the fate of almost every German soldier inside the pocket.
Yeah.
Such an army needed several hundreds of tons of supplies daily, and the Luftwaffe could provide only a fraction of that.
Damn.
So the shortages of everything from food to ammunition and winter clothing began almost immediately.
Yeah, that was
the
dumb.
horrors that were about to become reality, they couldn't have even imagined in their worst nightmares. Let's start lightly and first explain the way combat worked inside the encircled city. And when I say lightly, I really mean that. As horrible as it was, the fighting itself wasn't even the worst thing they endured. Germans, expecting a quick victory, got their dreams shattered in what they now called Rattenkrieg, colourfully meaning the Rat War. House to house, floor to floor, and room to room fighting was an everyday occurrence, with both sides fanatically trying to capture and hold positions. One side would capture a house, then lose it in a counterattack, then attack again and recapture it, only to be pushed back once more. Each time, both sides suffered horrendous casualties. And this was a daily occurrence.
Yeah, that sounds bad. Like, it sounds terrible. I wonder why, for example, in Call of Duty World War II, 2018, were they only just showing the Allied side of the game? Because I also wanted to see the Soviet side of the game. I wish they was able to have 2 different versions of it, because I know, like, in the previous Call of Duty, they had a Soviet version. But this one right here, Stalingrad, it just sounds like a very, very crazy battle. Like, it probably is. In your opinion, what's the biggest battle? That's what I'm gonna ask. What's the biggest battle that y'all think is the craziest one, like, of them all?
For example,
like, it sounds like this one.
Stalingrad's central railway station changed hands 13 times in a single day. And we should probably explain the way of fighting a bit more, because this was everything but an ordinary battlefield. We really couldn't put enough emphasis on how close the fighting was. The Soviets were using the tactic of quote-unquote hugging the Germans to make it harder for artillery and dive bombers to be used, as the targets were so close to friendly troops. There were actual instances of fighting in multi-story buildings where Germans would be on one floor, beneath them were Soviet soldiers, and beneath them again were more Germans, all fighting from every direction. Soldiers were crawling through sewers, trenches, rubble, and collapsed buildings to outmaneuver and surprise one another. Night raids were common, and they were literally fighting in the same rooms, with both sides forming small assault squads.
You couldn't even go to sleep,
to
dog.
infiltrate enemy-held ruins. Bayonets, knives, spades, grenades, satchel charges, submachine guns, and even flamethrowers were all tools used to do the job.
That's a maze, dog. Like, again, how long did this battle go on? You gotta think about it. Every day, every night you had to fight. There's no sleeping. There's no eating. None of that. Like, at this point, like, you would want to give up. Like, that's an intense battle. You're scared. That's PTSD. Like, if you would have survived that Stalingrad war and got home, you wouldn't be able to sleep at all. You would think someone's out to get you, like, every day, every night. I don't know how long that would last.
The Soviet PPSH-41 submachine gun would shine, and it was used by both sides. But there were others as well. Every conceivable tactic and trick was used by both sides to inflict as much damage as possible. Soviets would dig tunnels and plant explosives to blow up heavily defended German positions, much like the tunnelers and trench raiders of World War I. Mines, booby traps, ambushes. Snipers, for example, had unlimited opportunity to hide in ruins, camouflage themselves in the snow, and shoot anyone who peered out of cover.
Yeah.
They had a huge impact on
You
both
couldn't
sides
leave the
and caused
city.
heavy casualties. Soviet sniper Vasily Zaitsev famously had over 200 confirmed kills and participated in several infamous sniper duels.
How do you count that? I wouldn't
As
want
the
to count
battle
that.
dragged on into December and real winter began, with temperatures plummeting to minus 30 degrees, the cold began to take as many lives as the fighting. German soldiers, already malnourished, battered, and without proper clothing, were now freezing to death in large numbers. Frostbite and hunger became even greater enemies than Soviet soldiers, and there was no protection from either. The sight was horrific, and we could not even describe it or show it here on YouTube, but you can look it up on Google and see it for yourself.
And that's what I will do. Look it up.
The already reduced daily bread ration was further cut from 300 grams to 100, which was about 2 slices, and even that bread was mostly made from sawdust. Horses were eaten at first, but they were soon gone. Then starving soldiers turned to dogs, rats, and even cooking leather bells. But when that ran out, well, how can I say it without saying it? There was one thing that was not in short supply, and that was fallen soldiers. I will let your imagination conclude the rest. And yes, that did happen. Soldiers wrote in their diaries that they were turning into animals.
Shit.
Medical supplies ran out as well, and being wounded more often meant death, just in a slower and far more horrible way. Typhus spread, and most surgical procedures that had to be done were performed without anesthesia. The condition of the German army was on the breaking point. There was no morale, with all kinds of incidents you could and could not.
Do set them up for failure, bro. Like, you don't put your people in that type of war with no type of supplies, nothing, dog. Like, bro did not think. Like, you didn't think at all. This is a cold region, bro. Like, you didn't think to supply them with nothing, bro. Like, go ahead and take the city. It's easy for you guys. Yeah, go die for me. Like, what? Like, that's crazy.
And yet, they were strictly forbidden to surrender. With Hitler
You can't
personally
surrender.
reminding General Paulus that no
You're gonna
German
die
soldier
anyway. That's what I'm
ever
hearing.
surrendered. However, not only German soldiers were the ones who struggled with supplies. Soviet civilians who had not evacuated were now trapped in this battle and just contributing to the all-out horror. They tried to find protection in the devastated city without food or water, and around 40,000 of them would perish during the fighting. Many of them died during bombings and shellings, including from both the German and Soviet
How
side,
did they not
as
get
were
out
right
of
in
there?
between the fighting, but
Get
also
out
for
of there.
far more disturbing reasons. There were atrocities, there was hunger, there was winter, and there was no protection from any of it. Women even shaved their heads to look like men and avoid being attacked in different ways by the soldiers.
What? Women shave their heads to look like men to avoid being... You're gonna be assumed as a prisoner of war or a soldier. Like, I don't really get the logic in that. Why would you do that? As far as getting the R word or something? Is that all you're worried about? Because if anything, no one's safe. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, men will probably get treated the worst because they look like men. You're seen as a soldier or something. Maybe I'm tripping, but I don't really get that. I don't get that logic. I don't.
Going out in search of food or water was a deadly activity. Meanwhile, the encircled German army was desperately negotiating with the high command to save them. Field Marshal Manstein attempted an armored relief, and he managed to fight through to within 30 miles of Stalingrad, but was stopped by relentless Soviet attacks. Inside the city, German defenses were shrinking inward. They soon had to abandon the last functioning airstrip. They received a couple more airdrop supplies, but it was a far cry from the amount they needed. Ammunition was almost completely expended. Fuel for tanks and heating had long been gone. By late January 1943, the situation was beyond hopeless. But still, one final and most disturbing chapter of the battle was yet to come. Soviet forces in Operation Ring cut German defenses into smaller pieces. And from the original 300,000 soldiers, there were about 90,000 remaining, barely alive, and in any fighting condition.
Damn.
Many were deserting and surrendering, but after everything that happened and what the German army had done to the Soviet people, they were not always quite welcome to become prisoners of war, if you know what I mean. And that brings us to the next disturbing point. What happened to almost all German soldiers who surrendered, and what those handful few who would still be alive after the war had to endure. On January 31st, General Paulus finally found the courage to directly disobey Hitler's order. After being completely surrounded in his headquarters, he decided to surrender the remaining half-starved Axis troops still alive in Stalingrad. Hitler was furious. Paulus became the only German field marshal ever to be captured alive. The once invincible Sixth Army had been annihilated. Even Soviet soldiers were shocked by the state of the Germans, in dirty frozen uniforms, looking like skeletons, barely able to walk. But the hatred ran deep, and the horrors were still far from over for the Germans. They were now marched off to prisoner of war camps, but many would never reach them. They were marching over the freezing steppe, and they were dying from exposure and exhaustion in massive numbers. Anyone who could not keep walking was immediately put down by the guards and left in the snow.
Wow.
Listen to this. Out of approximately 91,000 German prisoners, only around 5,000 would survive to return home. To make this even worse, the last of them...
These jokers took out 85,000 of them. If I heard it correctly, he said out of the 90,000, only 5,000 survived. That's 85,000. Wow.
...returned a full 11 years after World War II had ended. They were forced to work in camps, factories, and mines. As the Soviets put it, to repair the damage they had caused to the country and rebuild what they had destroyed. In other words, from all prisoners, over 90% would perish after the battle had ended. Completely
90% would perish afterwards.
abandoned by the very country they fought for. Stalingrad marked the first major loss for the German army and the turning point in the tide of the war. After the battle, the German army was in strategic retreat, all the way back to Berlin eventually, where it had all started years before. The Battle of Stalingrad has long since ended, but even today the remains of fallen soldiers are still being...
Hey, dude. Okay, so let me ask y'all. So it's Stalingrad and Liberation of Paris were the two turning points, right? Those are probably the biggest two battles, right? But in this case, bro's so dumb. Like, it's just my opinion. Why would you send your people into a death trap like that? Like, knowing that the country, obviously Russia, Soviet Union is a much bigger country. You try to fight an enclosed battle. Not to mention, I don't even think y'all even made it to the oil rig. Like, you probably could have did something if you got to the oil rig first, then Stalingrad. But no, you decided to go to Stalingrad with little to no supplies to survive. Like, ooh, that hurts. Like, ooh, I couldn't imagine being in that type of battle. Every day it's something, and then if you surrender, you die. If you become a prisoner of war, you die. Like, if you're stuck in the battle, you probably die. Like, it's just like no way out of it, bro. I feel so bad for them. Like, cause I'm pretty sure a lot of them didn't even want to be in the war. Like, that's sad. Like, you were probably an innocent German, didn't even want to be in a war. You get thrown into a war, seen as a just evil person who wanted nothing to do with it, and a narcissist just wants you to go and die for him. Like, that is so sick, dog. Like, I can't imagine. But make sure you comment, like, subscribe down below. It is your boy Black Finesse. We are out.